I watch as Jiang Haoxian takes the microphone at what was supposed to be our engagement celebration, his handsome face cold as winter frost, as he announces to the 300 guests that he's breaking our engagement because he's realized he loves my sister instead, and the entire ballroom of the Grand Hyatt falls silent except for the sound of champagne glasses dropping from shocked hands while I stand there in my custom Vera Wang gown, feeling like the biggest fool in all of China. Ladies and gentlemen, Haoxian's voice carries across the opulent ballroom with its crystal chandeliers and imported Italian marble floors, his tone so confident and self-assured that I want to scream. I need to make an important announcement about tonight's celebration, because while we gathered here to celebrate my engagement to Lin Yuexi, I've come to realize that my heart truly belongs to her sister. Lin Yueling and I cannot in good conscience marry one woman when I'm deeply in love with another. The gasps that ripple through the crowd of Beijing's elite sound like a symphony of shock, and I can see my mother's horrified face at the head table. Her perfectly applied makeup, unable to hide the mortification blazing in her eyes, while my father sits frozen with his champagne glass halfway to his lips, and my sister Yueling stands beside Haoxian looking like a beautiful angel with tears streaming down her porcelain cheeks, as if this revelation is as surprising to her as it is to everyone else, when I know with absolute certainty that she orchestrated this entire humiliation. Haoxian, I manage to whisper, though my voice sounds strange and hollow even to my own ears. What are you talking about? We've been together for 3 years. We've planned our entire future together. How can you possibly say you love my sister when you barely know her? But even as the words leave my mouth, I can see the truth in his eyes, the way he looks at Yueling with an adoration he never once showed me, and I realize with growing horror that this betrayal runs deeper than a simple change of heart. I'm sorry, Yuexi, he says, and his voice actually sounds sincere, which makes this whole nightmare even worse. But I can't pretend anymore that what we had was real love. Not when I've experienced the genuine connection I have with Yueling. She understands me in ways you never could. She shares my dreams and ambitions. She makes me want to be a better man. And I know that continuing this engagement would be unfair to all 3 of us. The 3 of us, as if I'm just some inconvenient obstacle to their destined love story, and I want to scream that everything he thinks he knows about Yueling is actually about me? That every achievement he admires, every personality trait he's fallen for, every accomplishment that impressed him was stolen from me by the sister I trusted with my life? But when I open my mouth to tell the truth, my mother stands up from the head table with such fury blazing in her eyes that I actually take a step backward. Lin Yuexi, she hisses, her voice carrying across the silent ballroom. How dare you cause a scene at what should be a celebration? If Haoxian has realized that Yueling is better suited to be his wife, then you should gracefully accept his decision instead of making a fool of yourself and embarrassing our entire family in front of Beijing's most important people. Better suited, as if Yueling's suitability isn't built entirely on my stolen identity, my stolen achievements, my stolen personality that she's been cultivating and perfecting for years, while I stood by like an idiot believing that my sister could never intentionally hurt me. And the pain that rips through my chest is so sharp and brutal that I actually stumble, my hand reaching out to steady myself against the nearest table, while 300 pairs of eyes watch my public humiliation with the hungry fascination of vultures circling fresh carrion. But mother, I try to explain, my voice breaking with desperation, you don't understand. Yueling isn't who you think she is. She's been lying to all of us for years, using my name and my accomplishments to build relationships and opportunities that should have been mine, and if Haoxian thinks he loves her, it's only because she's been pretending to be me. The silence that follows my words is so profound that I can hear my own heartbeat thundering in my ears, and then my father stands up slowly, his face dark with a disappointment so deep it feels like a physical blow. And when he speaks, his voice carries the weight of absolute judgment and final condemnation. Enough, he says, and that single word seems to echo off the marble walls like a death sentence. I have never been more ashamed of a daughter than I am right now, watching you try to destroy your own sister's happiness out of jealousy and spite, and if you cannot find it in yourself to wish Yueling and Haoxian well, then perhaps you should remove yourself from this celebration before you cause any more damage to our family's reputation. Remove myself from my own engagement party, from the celebration of my own life that I planned and organized and dreamed about for months. And as I look around the ballroom at the faces of people I've known since childhood, I see nothing but pity and disgust and secondhand embarrassment, as if I'm the villain in this story, instead of the victim of the most elaborate betrayal in modern history. But the worst part, the detail that breaks my heart completely, is watching Yuling step forward with perfect timing, her eyes wide with innocent concern as she reaches out to touch my arm with gentle, sisterly affection, and when she speaks, her voice is soft and caring and designed to make me look even more unstable and jealous by comparison. "Yuexi, please don't be upset with me," she says, and her tears look so genuine that even I might believe them if I didn't know better. "I never meant for any of this to happen. I tried to fight my feelings for Hao Tian because I knew you cared about him, but sometimes love just finds a way, and I hope someday you can forgive me and understand that I never wanted to hurt you. Never wanted to hurt me," when every word out of her mouth is carefully calculated to twist the knife deeper, to make me look like the unreasonable sister who can't accept that the better woman won, and I can see the guests nodding along with her perfectly delivered performance, their faces softening with sympathy for poor Yueling who fell in love despite her best efforts to stay loyal to her sister. "You're lying," I whisper, but my voice has no strength left, and the words disappear into the vast ballroom like smoke. "Everything about you is a lie. Everything you've achieved, everything you've become, everything Haoshan thinks he loves about you belongs to me, and someday everyone will know the truth about what you really are." But even as I speak, I can see that my words are falling on deaf ears, that my parents and Haoshan and all 300 guests have already written me off as the bitter, jealous sister who can't handle being outshone by someone better, and when my mother walks over to me with her face set in lines of cold fury, I know that this nightmare is far from over. "You will apologize to your sister immediately," she commands, her voice low and deadly serious. "And then you will congratulate them both on their engagement and wish them every happiness. Or you will leave this hotel and not return to our family home until you can behave like a civilized human being instead of a spoiled child throwing a tantrum. Apologize to the sister who stole my entire life, congratulate the man who just humiliated me in front of Beijing's elite, wish happiness to the couple whose love story is built on my stolen identity." And when I look into my mother's eyes, I see no warmth, no understanding, no willingness to even consider that I might be telling the truth about the systematic theft that destroyed my life from the inside out. I remember now how it started so innocently when we were 16, Yueling asking to borrow my student ID for a modeling audition because hers was damaged, and how that single lie snowballed into her using my name for university applications, scholarship interviews, internship programs, even social media accounts, until everyone in our circle knew Lin Yueling as the brilliant, beautiful, accomplished daughter while I became the forgotten shadow in my own family. The memory hits me like a physical blow as I stand in that humiliating ballroom, remembering that spring afternoon 6 years ago when Yueling came to my room with tears in her eyes and a story about how she'd accidentally damaged her student ID right before the most important modeling audition of her young life, and how she begged me to let her borrow mine just this once, swearing that she'd be so careful with it and return it immediately after the audition. "Please, sister," she had said, her voice trembling with what I believed was genuine desperation. "This audition could change my entire future. The agency specifically requested students from our school, and I can't get a replacement ID until Monday, but the audition is tomorrow, and if I miss this opportunity, I'll regret it for the rest of my life, and you know I would never ask if it wasn't absolutely crucial." I had looked at her tear-stained face and felt my heart break with sympathy, because even though we weren't biological sisters, having been adopted into the Lin family as babies, I loved her like blood, and the thought of her missing such an important opportunity because of a damaged piece of plastic seemed unnecessarily cruel, so I handed over my student ID without a second thought, never imagining that this single act of sisterly kindness would become the foundation of my own destruction. But what I didn't know then, what I was too naive and trusting to understand, was that Yueling had deliberately damaged her own ID as part of a carefully planned strategy to begin using my identity for opportunities she couldn't access on her own merit. And when she returned my ID 3 days later with effusive thanks and a story about how well the audition went, I never suspected that she had already made copies and begun building a secondary identity using my name and credentials. The modeling contract she signed that summer was in my name, Lin Yuexi, and when photographers and agencies began reaching out for additional work, they contacted her using my contact information, slowly building a portfolio and reputation that should have belonged to me. While I remained completely unaware that my sister was systematically stealing my identity for her own advancement. "Look what came in the mail for you," she would say, bringing me letters from modeling agencies and fashion brands, her face bright with innocent excitement. "You're becoming so famous. Sister, everyone wants to work with Lin Yuexi. Maybe you should consider doing more modeling work since you're clearly in such high demand." But whenever I expressed interest in pursuing these opportunities, she would always have perfectly reasonable explanations for why I couldn't follow through. The timing conflicted with my studies. The locations were too far from home, the contracts weren't quite right for someone of my social standing, and like a fool, I trusted her judgment and allowed her to handle the communications, never realizing that she was turning down opportunities in my name while accepting them for herself using my stolen identity. By the time we graduated high school, Yueling had built an impressive modeling portfolio under my name, complete with professional photographs, magazine spreads, and commercial contracts. And when university admission season arrived, she used my test scores and my modeling achievements to apply for scholarships and programs that I never even knew existed. "Congratulations, Miss Lin Yuexi," the Beijing University admissions officer had said during what I thought was my interview. "Your entrance exam scores are exceptional. And combined with your impressive modeling career and community service record, you're exactly the kind of well-rounded student we're looking for at Beijing University." Community service record that Yueling had created using my name, modeling career built on my stolen identity, test scores that were legitimately mine but credited to her applications, and when I left that interview feeling confident about my acceptance, I never suspected that my sister had scheduled her own interview using my name just 2 hours later, presenting herself as the Lin Yuexi, whose achievements had impressed the admissions committee. The acceptance letter that arrived 3 weeks later was addressed to Lin Yuexi, but when I tried to confirm my enrollment, the university registrar informed me that Lin Yuexi had already enrolled and submitted her housing deposit, and when I explained that there must be some mistake, that I was Lin Yuexi, they showed me the enrollment photo and identification documents that clearly belonged to my sister. "I'm sorry, Miss Lin," the registrar had said with professional sympathy, "but there seems to be some confusion about your identity. Perhaps you should contact our student services office to resolve this issue. Though I should warn you that identity fraud is a serious offense that could result in criminal charges if it's proven that you're deliberately impersonating another student." Identity fraud? When I was the one whose identity had been stolen, and when I brought this impossible situation to my parents? They looked at me with such disappointment and confusion that I began to doubt my own sanity. Because how could I prove that I was the real Lin Yuexi when all the documentation and photographic evidence supported my sister's claim to my identity? "Sweetheart," my mother had said, her voice gentle but firm, "I think you may be confused about some things. Yueling worked very hard for that university acceptance, and while I understand you might feel jealous of her achievements, you can't claim credit for things you didn't actually do." Things I didn't actually do? When every single achievement on that acceptance letter was mine, earned through my studying, my test-taking, my work, but somehow twisted and rewritten to support Yueling's version of events, and the more I protested, the more concerned my parents became about my mental state and my apparent inability to accept that my sister was simply more accomplished and ambitious than I was. The internship at Zhang Corporation that summer should have been mine, applied for and won using my academic credentials and my interview skills, but when I arrived for my first day of work, the human resources manager informed me that they already had a Lin Yuexi working in their marketing department, and perhaps there had been some mistake in the hiring process. "Actually," the manager had said, consulting her files with growing confusion, "according to our records, Lin Yuexi specifically requested that her sister Lin Yueling not be hired for any positions this summer, citing potential conflicts of interest and family dynamics that might interfere with her professional development. My sister had not only stolen my internship, but had actively blocked me from finding alternative employment using the influence and connections that rightfully belonged to me, and when I confronted her about this latest betrayal, she looked at me with such hurt and confusion that I almost believed her innocence. "Yuexi, I have no idea what you're talking about," she had said, her eyes wide with apparent shock. "I would never do anything to hurt your career prospects. Maybe there was just some miscommunication or administrative error, and I'm sure if we talk to the right people, we can get everything sorted out." But nothing ever got sorted out, because every attempt I made to reclaim my stolen opportunities was met with documentation and testimony that supported her version of events. And gradually, I began to understand that my sister hadn't just stolen my identity, she had replaced it so completely that even official records and institutional memories reflected her as the original Lin Yuexi. The social media accounts that bore my name but featured her photographs, the academic transcripts that listed my test scores under her personal information, the business cards and professional networking profiles that used my achievements to build her career, all of it woven together so seamlessly that anyone investigating would conclude that I was the imposter trying to steal my sister's rightfully earned success. "Why are you doing this to me?" I had asked her one night when the weight of my stolen life became too much to bear. We're sisters. We're supposed to support each other, not destroy each other. And I don't understand how you can sleep at night knowing that everything you've achieved was taken from someone who loves you. But she had just looked at me with those innocent eyes that I had trusted for so many years, and when she answered, her voice was soft and sad and full of what sounded like genuine regret for my apparent mental health struggles. "Sister, I'm worried about you," she had said, reaching out to touch my hand with gentle concern. "You've been saying these strange things for months now, claiming that my achievements somehow belong to you, and I think maybe you should talk to someone professional about these feelings, because this obsession with my life isn't healthy for either of us." Obsession with her life, when it was my life she had stolen so completely that even my own family believed her version of reality over mine. And as I stand in this ballroom watching the final act of her performance, I realized that tonight's engagement party catastrophe was just the inevitable conclusion of a 6-year campaign to erase Lin Yuexi from existence and replace her with a superior version played by Lin Yueling. When I finally gathered evidence of the switched identities and brought it to the family dinner that Sunday evening in March, presenting documents and photographs and even DNA test results I'd secretly obtained, my parents looked at me with such disappointment and disgust, as if I was the fraud trying to steal my sister's life, and my father's words still echo in my mind as I felt my heart literally breaking in my chest. "Yuexi, we're ashamed that you'd go this far to hurt your own sister out of jealousy." The memory of that night burns through me as I stand in this ballroom, remembering how I had spent weeks gathering irrefutable proof of the identity theft, carefully documenting every stolen achievement, every falsified document, every lie that had built Yueling's fake life, and how I had arranged that family dinner with such hope in my heart, believing that finally, my parents would see the truth and help me reclaim what was rightfully mine. I had printed out side-by-side comparisons of test scores and official documents, photographs showing Yueling using my student ID at various events, bank records proving that scholarship money intended for me had been deposited into her accounts, even sworn statements from former classmates who remembered the original identity switch, and I had presented it all like a prosecutor making the case of a lifetime, my hands shaking with nervous energy as I laid out 6 years of systematic fraud. "This is what I've been trying to tell you," I had said, my voice trembling with desperate hope. "Every single thing you admire about Yueling was stolen from me. Every achievement she's earned, every opportunity she's received, every reason Haoshin fell in love with her, all of it built on my stolen identity, and I have the proof right here, in black and white." But instead of the shock and outrage I expected, instead of apologies and promises to make things right, my parents had looked at the evidence with expressions of growing horror, not at Yueling's crimes, but at what they saw as my unhinged obsession with destroying my own sister. "Where did you get these documents?" my mother had asked, her voice cold and sharp. "Some of these look altered or manipulated, and I cannot believe you would go to such lengths to fabricate evidence against your own family member." Fabricated evidence, when every document was authentic and every photograph was real? But somehow my parents saw conspiracy and manipulation where there should have been obvious proof, and the more I insisted on the truth, the more they became convinced of my guilt. "And what exactly is this supposed to prove?" my father had demanded, holding up the DNA test results that I had obtained through a private laboratory. "That you and Yueling aren't biological sisters? We've never claimed that either of you were our biological children. You were both adopted as babies. So this test doesn't prove anything except that you're willing to waste money on pointless investigations." The DNA test that I had hoped would prove that Yueling and I weren't even related, that she had no legitimate claim to the Lin family name or inheritance, but which my parents dismissed as irrelevant since they had never hidden our adoptions, and I realized with growing despair that even scientific evidence couldn't penetrate their absolute faith in Yueling's innocence. "But don't you see?" I had pleaded, spreading out photographs of Yueling using my identification at modeling auditions and university interviews. She's been impersonating me for years, building a career and reputation using my name, and now she's about to marry my fiancé while pretending to be the woman he fell in love with. Your fiancé, as if Haoshin had been assigned to me by birth rather than won through courtship, and I could see in my parents' eyes that they viewed my desperation as evidence of entitlement and jealousy rather than righteous anger at being systematically erased from my own life. Uexi, my mother had said, her voice heavy with disappointment and something that looked dangerously like disgust. Listening to you tonight, seeing this obsessive behavior, this desperate attempt to tear down your sister's happiness, we're starting to understand why Haoshin might have realized that Yuling is the better choice for a life partner. The better choice, because my sister had stolen my personality and achievements so completely that she had become a perfected version of me, leaving behind the original who seemed bitter and unaccomplished by comparison. And when my father nodded in agreement with my mother's assessment, I felt something inside my chest crack like a breaking bone. We've watched Yuling grow into a remarkable young woman, he had continued, his voice taking on the warm pride that I had always longed to hear directed at me. Her academic achievements, her successful modeling career, her gracious personality and mature judgment, while you seem to have become increasingly unstable and jealous, and frankly, we're concerned about your mental health. My mental health? As if the natural response to having your entire identity stolen and your family turned against you was evidence of psychological problems rather than completely justified outrage. And when I tried to explain once more that every single achievement they attributed to Yueling was actually mine, my parents exchanged a look that spoke volumes about their growing belief that their adopted daughter had developed serious delusions. "We think you need professional help," my mother had said with finality. "And until you're willing to accept responsibility for your behavior and stop making these ridiculous accusations against your sister, we don't think it's healthy for you to live in this house or work at the family company." Thrown out of my own home and fired from my own inheritance because I had dared to tell the truth about the theft of my identity, and when I looked at Yuling across that dining room table, I saw no guilt or remorse in her eyes, only a carefully calculated sadness designed to make my parents feel even more justified in their decision to choose her over me. "I'm so sorry this happened," she had whispered, her voice breaking with perfectly performed emotion. "I never wanted our family to be torn apart like this, and I hope someday Uexi can find the help she needs to overcome these feelings and be happy for the people who love her." People who love her, when the people who should have loved me had been systematically turned against me by the very person they were now protecting? And as I gathered up my evidence and my dignity and walked out of that house for what I believed would be the last time, I felt something cold and final settle into my bones. The weeks that followed were a blur of desperate attempts to rebuild my life using whatever fragments of identity Yuling had left behind, sleeping on friends' couches and working temporary jobs while trying to establish my legal right to my own name and credentials, but everywhere I turned I found that my sister had already been there first, poisoning potential allies against me with stories of my mental instability and obsessive jealousy. "I'm sorry, Miss Lin," the lawyer had said after reviewing my case, "but from a legal standpoint, your sister has established clear possession of the identity and achievements in question, and without more compelling evidence than what you've presented, it would be very difficult to prove fraud rather than simply a family dispute over shared resources." Shared resources, as if my stolen life was community property rather than personal theft, and when I realized that even the legal system offered no recourse for victims of identity theft within families, I felt the last of my hope drain away like water through broken glass. The night everything ended, I was driving through Beijing in the rain, my mind cycling through 6 years of betrayal and humiliation, when I saw the news report on my phone announcing Haoshin and Yueling's engagement party at the Grand Hyatt, complete with photographs of my sister wearing the face I had been born with while living the life I should have had. The rage that filled me was so pure and overwhelming that I could barely see the road through my tears, and when I pressed harder on the accelerator, feeling my car respond with dangerous speed on the wet asphalt, I remember thinking that maybe this was the only way to escape a world where everything I was had been stolen and replaced by someone better at being me than I was. The last thing I remember is the sound of screeching brakes and shattering glass, the sensation of flying through space as my car left the road and rolled down the embankment, and the strange peace that settled over me as I realized that finally, no one could steal anything else from me because there was nothing left to take. Then I opened my eyes and realized I had been reborn. I'm staring at my teenage bedroom ceiling with its constellation of glow-in-the-dark stars that I'd forgotten I once loved, and when I sit up to look in the mirror across the room, I see my 16-year-old face staring back at me with knowledge that no teenager should possess. And I know with absolute certainty that I've been given a second chance to rewrite the story that destroyed my life. The first thing that hits me is the absolute silence. No sound of Beijing traffic outside my window, no hum of the expensive air purification system my parents installed in the main house. Just the gentle quiet of our family's suburban compound where I spent my teenage years believing that love and trust and family loyalty meant something real and permanent. My hands are smaller than I remember, smoother, without the calluses I developed from my desperate attempts to rebuild my life after losing everything, and when I flex my fingers, they move with the easy grace of youth unmarked by tragedy. March 15th. The calendar on my desk announces in cheerful pink letters, and I know with the terrible certainty of lived experience that this is the day everything began. The day Yuling will come to my room with tears in her eyes and a story about a damaged student ID. The day I made the first mistake that would eventually cost me everything I ever loved or wanted or deserved. But this time will be different, because this time I know exactly who Lin Yueling really is underneath her mask of sisterly devotion. And this time I won't be the naive little girl who hands over her identity out of misplaced kindness. This time I'll be the architect of her destruction, and I'll build her downfall so carefully and completely that not even our parents will be able to deny the truth when it finally comes to light. The knock on my bedroom door comes at exactly 2:47 p.m., just as I remember, soft and hesitant like Yueling is afraid to disturb my studying. And when I call out, "Come in," my voice sounds strange to my ears, higher and younger than the bitter woman I became. Though I can already feel the cold calculations settling into my bones like armor against the performance I'm about to witness. "Sister," Yueling says as she pushes open my door, and seeing her 16-year-old face again is like looking at a photograph of innocence that I know is completely false. Her eyes wide and liquid with unshed tears, her lower lip trembling with perfectly practiced vulnerability. "I'm so sorry to bother you when you're studying, but I have a huge problem and I don't know what to do." What to do? As if this moment isn't choreographed down to the last detail, as if she hasn't been planning this conversation for weeks or months, waiting for the perfect opportunity to begin her systematic theft of my identity, and I have to bite the inside of my cheek to keep from smiling at the cruel irony of having advanced knowledge of her entire strategy. "What's wrong?" I ask, setting down my textbook and turning to face her with the same concerned expression I wore the first time we lived through this scene, and I watch her take a shuddering breath and move deeper into my room, her body language perfectly calibrated to inspire sympathy and protective instincts. "I accidentally damaged my student ID this morning," she says, reaching into her pocket to pull out what looks like a completely destroyed piece of plastic. Though I know now that she destroyed it deliberately, probably practiced the exact amount of damage that would make replacement impossible but the destruction believable. And I just found out about this amazing modeling audition tomorrow that could change my entire future, but they specifically require current student identification from our school. Change her entire future, when what she really means is begin her theft of mine, and I study the damaged ID with new eyes, seeing the careful precision of the tears and the strategic placement of the scratches that make the photograph and personal information completely illegible, while leaving just enough intact to prove that it was once a legitimate document. "Oh no," I say, injecting exactly the right amount of sympathy into my voice. "That's terrible timing. Can't you get a replacement from the school office?" "That's the problem," she continues, her voice rising with perfectly performed desperation. "The office is closed until Monday for some kind of system upgrade, and the audition is tomorrow afternoon, and they specifically said that without proper student identification, they won't even let me in the building. System upgrade that I know is completely fictional, because I remember calling the school office later that week about an unrelated issue and speaking to the secretary who had been working all through this supposedly closed period. But at 16, I had no reason to verify my sister's story, and even now I have to admire the completeness of her preparation. "I'm sure there's something we can figure out," I say, rising from my desk chair and moving to sit beside her on my bed, watching her face carefully for any crack in her performance, any hint of the calculating intelligence I know is working behind those tears. Maybe we could call the audition organizers and explain the situation? "I already tried that," she says quickly, her tears flowing more freely now, and I have to admit that her crying is remarkably convincing. No sniffling or red nose or puffy eyes, just perfect crystalline drops that make her look ethereally beautiful rather than messy and human. But they said they have hundreds of applicants and can't make exceptions for documentation issues, and this is my only chance to audition for this agency. They only do open calls once a year. Once a year, creating artificial scarcity to make her request seem more urgent and reasonable, and I can see the exact moment when she prepares to make her real request. The way her shoulders straighten slightly, and her voice takes on a tone of reluctant hopefulness, as if the idea is just occurring to her rather than being the entire point of this conversation. UXE, she says, and I notice how she uses my full name instead of just sister, adding weight and formality to what she's about to ask. I know this is a huge favor to request, and I would never ask if it wasn't absolutely crucial, but our student IDs look almost identical, same school, same year, same basic information layout, and I was wondering, she trails off as if she can't quite bring herself to voice the request, as if the very idea of borrowing my identification is so presumptuous that she's embarrassed to even suggest it, and I have to fight the urge to applaud her performance because it really is masterfully done. You want to borrow my student ID? I ask, pretending to be surprised by the suggestion, and I watch her face carefully as she nods with apparent reluctance, as if she's forcing herself to ask for something that goes against her natural inclinations. Just for the audition, she says quickly. I would be so incredibly careful with it, and I'd return it immediately afterward, I promise, and I know it's a lot to ask. But this opportunity means everything to me, and I would never ask if there was any other way. This opportunity, that means everything to her because it's the first step in stealing everything from me, and as I look into her tearful eyes, I realize that this moment is my chance to begin documenting her crimes from the very beginning, to build an unshakable case that will destroy her so completely that even our parents won't be able to deny the truth. Of course, I say, watching her face transform with surprised delight. We're sisters, we should help each other achieve our dreams, and I'll be studying all weekend anyway, so I won't need my ID until Monday. But this time, unlike the first time I lived through this moment, I'm already planning how to use her request against her, how to document this conversation and her use of my identification, how to build the foundation of evidence that will eventually expose her for the fraud she really is. This time, I won't stop her from stealing my identity. I'll help her do it so thoroughly and systematically that when the truth finally comes to light, her destruction will be absolute and irreversible. This time, Lin Yueling will get everything she thinks she wants, and it will be the very thing that destroys her. When Yueling approaches me that morning with her sweet smile and damaged ID card story, I surprise her by agreeing immediately, even suggesting she keep my ID for the whole week since I won't need it, and I watch her eyes widen with shocked delight before she quickly masks it with grateful tears and sisterly hugs, while I'm already planning how this moment will look played back in court someday. Really? She breathes, her voice trembling with what sounds like overwhelming relief, but which I now recognize as barely contained excitement at how easily her plan is succeeding. You would really let me borrow it for the whole week? Sister, I can't tell you how much this means to me. You're saving my entire future. Saving her future by destroying mine, just as she planned. But this time, I'm the one controlling the narrative. This time, I'm the one building toward a dramatic revelation, and as I hand over my student ID with a warm smile, I'm already calculating how many laws she'll break and how much evidence I'll gather before I'm ready to spring my trap. What kind of sister would I be if I didn't help you chase your dreams? I say, and the irony tastes bitter and sweet on my tongue because I know exactly what kind of sister she is, the kind who will steal everything I am and make it her own. Besides, you're right about our IDs looking similar, and if this audition is as important as you say, I want you to have every possible advantage. Every possible advantage? Including the stolen identity that will become her signature move, and I watch her clutch my ID to her chest like it's made of gold instead of plastic, her eyes bright with tears that I now know are tears of triumph rather than gratitude. But what she doesn't know, what she can't possibly suspect, is that I've already taken photographs of my damaged ID and documented our entire conversation with the voice recording app on my phone, hidden in my desk drawer and capturing every word of her careful manipulation and my apparently innocent cooperation. I promise I'll take perfect care of it, she says, though I know she's planning to make copies and begin building a duplicate identity that will slowly replace mine. And I'll bring it back Sunday evening, or Monday morning at the latest if the audition runs late. Sunday evening, when I know she'll actually return it Tuesday with apologies about unexpected complications and additional opportunities, buying herself extra time to establish the foundations of her fraud, and I nod understandingly while mentally noting how this delay will become part of my evidence that her intentions were never temporary. Don't worry about the timing, I say with sisterly generosity. Take as long as you need, and I hope the audition goes amazingly well. You deserve every success that comes your way. Every success that she steals from me, and as she leaves my room with effusive thanks and promises to make me proud, I'm already planning my next moves. The careful documentation and strategic positioning that will turn her theft into her own destruction. The first call I make is to Zhou Mingchen next door, the quiet boy who brings me books and always seemed to see more than he said, though in my previous life I was too distracted by more glamorous friendships to appreciate his steady loyalty. Mingchen, I say when he answers his phone, do you have time to help me with a project? I need someone with your photography skills and your attention to detail. Of course, he says immediately, his voice warm with the uncomplicated kindness that I never valued properly before. What kind of project? Documentation. I say carefully, knowing that I can't reveal too much too early but wanting to establish him as an ally in what's coming. I think someone close to me might be lying about some important things, and I want to gather evidence before I make any accusations. Someone close to me, as if Yueling is merely a friend rather than the sister who will systematically destroy my life. And I can hear the concern in Mingxin's voice when he responds, the protective instincts that I never noticed in my previous life. Are you in some kind of trouble? He asks, because you know I'll help you with whatever you need, but I want to make sure you're being safe about whatever you're investigating. Safe, when safety was never an option in my relationship with Yueling, when trusting her was the most dangerous thing I ever did, but I appreciate his concern even as I plan to use his loyalty as part of my strategy. I'm being very careful, I assure him, but I need someone I can trust completely, someone who won't ask too many questions until I'm ready to explain everything. Someone who won't betray me to my family or try to talk me out of my revenge, and when he agrees without hesitation, I know I've made the right choice in bringing him into my plans. The second call I make is to Chen Bo, our family's head butler who has worked for the Lin family for 30 years and sees everything that happens in our household, though in my previous life I never thought to cultivate him as an ally or source of information. Chen Bo, I say when I find him in the kitchen, can I ask you something privately? Of course, Miss Uxe, he says with the formal courtesy that all our staff maintain, though I can see the genuine warmth in his eyes that tells me he's always been fond of me despite my family's eventual preference for Yueling. Have you ever noticed anything strange about the way our mail gets sorted? I ask carefully. Letters or packages that might get mixed up between Yueling and me? It's a leading question designed to make him think about patterns he might have dismissed as coincidence, and I watch his face carefully as he considers my words with the thoroughness that 30 years of household management has trained into him. Now that you mention it, he says slowly, there have been several occasions when mail addressed to you somehow ended up in Miss Yuling's possession, and when I asked about it, she always said you had asked her to handle your correspondence because you were too busy with studies. Too busy with studies while she was busy stealing my opportunities, and I nod as if this explanation makes perfect sense while making a mental note to ask him to begin keeping track of our mail distribution with more careful attention to detail. Could you do me a favor? I ask, keeping my voice casual. Could you start making copies of any mail that comes for either of us before delivering it? I'm working on organizing my personal records, and I want to make sure I don't lose track of any important correspondence. Personal records that will become legal evidence, and when he agrees with the discretion I expected, I know I've established another avenue for documentation that Yueling won't suspect. The third and most important call I make is to my grandmother, my father's mother, who lives in the family's old mansion across the city and who has always seemed to see through Yueling's performance with the clarity that comes from decades of experience with manipulative people. Grandma, I say when she answers her phone, it's Uxe, and I was wondering if I could come visit you this weekend, just the two of us. Of course, darling, she says, her voice brightening with the affection that I never appreciated properly in my previous life. You know you're always welcome here. And I've been hoping you'd spend more time with me instead of being so busy with that sister of yours all the time. That sister of mine and the subtle emphasis she puts on the words tells me that her suspicions about Yuling run deeper than I realized, that she might be the ally I need to validate my evidence when the time comes to reveal the truth. Actually, I say carefully, that's part of what I wanted to talk to you about. I think there are some things about our family dynamics that I'm starting to understand differently. I'm very interested to hear your thoughts, she says with a gravity that tells me she's been waiting for this conversation longer than I knew. And I think there are some things I should share with you as well, things I've observed but haven't felt comfortable discussing until now. Things she's observed about Yuling's true nature. And when we arrange for me to visit her Sunday afternoon, I know I'm building the foundation of an alliance that will be crucial when I finally expose my sister's crimes. But the most important thing I do that weekend is begin my own documentation, setting up hidden cameras in my room and the common areas where Yuling and I interact, installing voice recording apps on my phone that will capture every conversation, and creating encrypted digital files where I can store evidence of her systematic identity theft. Because this time, when Lin Yueling steals my life, every single moment will be recorded, every lie will be documented, every crime will be preserved in perfect detail, and when I finally reveal the truth, the evidence will be so overwhelming that no one will be able to deny what she really is. This time, I'm not the victim, I'm the prosecutor, and I'm building a case that will destroy her so completely that she'll wish she had never heard the name Lin Yuexi. I create opportunities for her to use my credentials, my achievements, my social connections, even helping her prepare for interviews and dates while secretly recording every conversation, every grateful admission of using my name, every detail of her systematic theft of my life, and when she gets accepted to Beijing University using my entrance exam scores, I congratulate her with such genuine-seeming happiness that even I almost believe my own performance. The beauty of my new strategy becomes clear within the first month, as I watch Yuling grow bolder and more careless with each successful theft, her confidence in my naive generosity making her sloppy about covering her tracks, and every time she uses my identity for another opportunity, I'm there with my hidden cameras and recording devices, building an archive of evidence that will be impossible to deny or explain away. Sister, she says one evening in April, bursting into my room with excitement that she doesn't even try to contain. You'll never guess what happened at the modeling agency today. They want to offer me a contract for their summer campaign. Isn't that amazing? Amazing that they want to offer Lin Yuexi a contract based on the portfolio she's been building using my name and my stolen credentials. And I look up from my homework with the bright smile of a supportive sister, while the recording app on my phone captures every word of her unconscious confession. That's wonderful news, I say with enthusiasm that sounds completely genuine. Tell me everything about the contract. I want to hear all the details. Well, she says, settling onto my bed with the comfortable familiarity of someone who has no idea she's confessing to a crime. They were so impressed with the Lin Yuexi portfolio that they want to make me the face of their entire teenage market campaign, 3 months of shoots with some of the best photographers in Beijing, and the money is incredible. The Lin Yuexi portfolio that belongs to me, built using my identity and my stolen opportunities, and I nod encouragingly while making mental notes about the contract details that will become evidence of her fraud. That sounds like such an amazing opportunity. I say, but just to be clear, when you say the Lin Yuexi portfolio, you mean they think you're Lin Yuexi, right? Like you're still using my name for the modeling work? It's a direct question designed to get her explicit admission on recording, and I watch her face carefully as she nods without any apparent concern about the implications of what she's saying. Oh yes, of course, she says easily. I mean, we started with your ID for that first audition, remember? And then it just made sense to keep using your name since that's how they know me, and honestly, Lin Yuexi has such a better ring to it for modeling than Lin Yueling, don't you think? Lin Yuexi has a better ring because it's my name and my identity that she's stolen, and I have to bite the inside of my cheek to keep from smiling at how casually she's just confessed to identity theft on a recording that will eventually be played in court. You're probably right about the name, I agree, and I'm just happy that you're getting such great opportunities, even if it means people think you're me sometimes. It's funny how that worked out, she continues, completely oblivious to the legal implications of what she's describing. I mean, I never intended for it to become a permanent thing, but now all my contacts and connections think of me as Lin Yuexi, and it would be so complicated to change everything back, especially when it's working out so well. So complicated to stop committing fraud, especially when it's profitable, and I nod understandingly while the recording captures her explicit acknowledgement that she's deliberately continuing to use my identity for personal gain. But the modeling contract is just the beginning, because as spring turns to summer, Yuling grows more ambitious with her theft, using my name and credentials to apply for prestigious internships, exclusive social events, even university programs that require stellar academic records. "I need to borrow your transcript," she tells me one afternoon in June. "There's this incredible summer program at Beijing University for academically gifted students, full scholarship plus stipend, but they need official documentation of academic achievement. My transcript showing my perfect grades and test scores, which she wants to use to qualify for a program I should be attending myself, and I hand over the sealed envelope with a smile while my hidden camera records her grateful acceptance of stolen goods. "Of course," I say, "I hope you get accepted. It sounds like an amazing opportunity." "Thanks to your incredible grades," she says with a laugh that sounds almost genuine. "Seriously, sister, I don't know what I would do without you. You're making all my dreams come true." My dreams that she's stolen and made her own, but this time her theft is happening exactly according to my plan. Each crime carefully documented and preserved for the day when I finally reveal the truth about who Lin Yueling really is. The university acceptance letter arrives in August, addressed to Lin Yuexi but delivered directly to Yueling's hands by Chen Bo, who now makes copies of everything before distribution, and when she shows me the letter with tears of joy in her eyes, I congratulate her with such sisterly pride that she actually hugs me with what seems like genuine affection. "Look at this," she says, holding up the acceptance letter like a trophy. They specifically mention being impressed with Lin Yuexi's academic record and community service involvement, and they're offering me a full scholarship plus early admission to their business program. Lin Yuexi's academic record, because those are my grades and my achievements, community service that I performed using my name and my time, full scholarship that should be mine by right, and I examine the letter with appropriate excitement while memorizing every detail for my growing evidence file. "This is incredible," I say, and I mean it, because watching her steal my future so blatantly while thinking she's outsmarting everyone is actually incredible in its audacity. "You must be so proud of everything you've accomplished." "I really am," she says with satisfaction that chills me to the bone. "I mean, I know I've had some help with things like your transcript and your ID, but I've worked so hard to make the most of every opportunity, and it's amazing how everything just keeps working out perfectly." Everything keeps working out because she's stealing from someone who loves her enough to enable her crimes, and as I watch her pack for her freshman year at Beijing University, my university using my acceptance, living my stolen life, I have to remind myself that patience is the key to perfect revenge. "I'm going to miss having you at home," I tell her the night before she leaves. And it's not entirely a lie, because in some twisted way I will miss watching her dig her own grave with such enthusiastic determination. "I'll miss you too," she says, "but just think, when I graduate I'll have a Beijing University degree and all these amazing connections, and I'll be able to help our whole family reach new levels of success. Success built on my stolen identity and my fraudulent credentials." And when she hugs me goodbye the next morning, I pat her back gently while my recording device captures her final words before leaving for my university with my name and my future. "Thank you for everything, sister," she whispers. "I promise I'll make you proud." She'll make Lin Yuexi proud, because that's who she thinks she is now, and as I wave goodbye from our front steps, I'm already planning how her pride will become her downfall when the truth finally comes to light. Because every theft has been recorded, every fraud has been documented, every crime has been preserved in perfect detail, and when I finally reveal what Lin Yueling has done, the evidence will be so overwhelming that even our parents won't be able to deny the truth. When Jiang Haotian arrives at our family's summer party that July, I introduce him to my sister Yueling while carefully stepping back and letting her charm work its magic using my achievements and personality that she's stolen so completely. And even though watching them fall in love using my stolen identity makes my heart ache with remembered pain, I know that this relationship built on lies will become the very weapon that destroys them both. The summer party is perfect for my purposes, held in our family's garden with all of Beijing's young elite in attendance. And when I see Hao Tian arrive in his tailored suit, looking every inch the successful young businessman, I feel the familiar flutter of attraction that I remember from my previous life. But this time I'm prepared for what comes next. Haoshan, I call out, walking over to greet him with the warm familiarity of old family friends. I'm so glad you could make it tonight. There's someone I want you to meet. Someone who will destroy his life using my stolen identity, though he doesn't know that yet, and I watch his face light up with the easy charm that made me fall in love with him before, his handsome features relaxed and confident as he follows my lead across the crowded garden. Always happy to meet your friends, he says, his voice carrying that note of genuine interest that I remember so well. You know I trust your judgment about people. My judgment about people, which is apparently terrible since I'm about to introduce him to the woman who will systematically deceive him while using my stolen personality. But this time I know exactly what I'm doing. This time I'm the one controlling the narrative. Yueling, I call to my sister, who is standing near the fountain looking ethereally beautiful in a white dress that makes her seem like an angel of innocence. Come meet Jiang Haotian. I think you two will have a lot in common. A lot in common because she's stolen my personality and interests so completely that she's become a perfected version of the woman Haoshen would fall in love with, and I watch her face brighten with interest as she approaches us with the graceful confidence that she's learned to project. It's lovely to meet you, she says, extending her hand with the perfect balance of friendliness and reserve. Yuexi has told me so much about you. Yuexi has told her about him because I trusted her with my secrets and dreams in my previous life, never knowing that she was cataloging my preferences and desires to use against me, and I step back slightly to give them space to interact while my hidden recording device captures every word of their first conversation. All good things, I hope, Haodian says with that charming smile that once made my heart race, and I watch Yueling respond with exactly the right amount of shy pleasure. Her cheeks flushing pink in a way that looks completely natural but which I know is carefully calculated. Of course, she says. Yuexi always speaks so highly of her friends, especially ones who share her interests in business and international development. My interests that she's claiming as her own, and I have to admire how smoothly she's already beginning to establish common ground using knowledge she's stolen from my conversations and my dreams, building a connection based on lies that will eventually destroy them both. International development? Haodian says, his eyebrows rising with genuine interest. That's fascinating. I've been working on some projects in Southeast Asia, specifically Myanmar, and it's always exciting to meet someone else who's passionate about emerging markets. Myanmar, where I know from my previous life he'll eventually sign the jade mining contract that becomes central to his business empire. And I watch Yueling's eyes light up with interest that would be completely genuine if she actually knew anything about international business instead of just stealing my knowledge. Myanmar is such an interesting case study, she says smoothly, and I recognize the words as paraphrased from conversations I had with my father about emerging markets. The political complexities make it challenging, but the potential for growth is incredible. The potential for growth that she understands only because she's stolen my education and my family's business discussions, but Haoshen doesn't know that, and I can see him becoming more interested in this beautiful, intelligent woman who seems to share his professional passions. Exactly, he says with growing enthusiasm. Most people don't understand the nuances of working in post-transition economies, but you clearly have a sophisticated understanding of the challenges and opportunities. A sophisticated understanding that belongs to me, built through years of study and family business discussions that she's absorbed through proximity and theft. And as I watch them fall into animated conversation about topics I introduced her to, I have to remind myself that this pain is temporary, that their connection built on lies will become the foundation of their mutual destruction. I should let you two talk, I say with sisterly tact. I need to check on the other guests, but I hope you'll both enjoy the party. Both enjoy the beginning of a relationship that will destroy them, and as I move away to mingle with other guests while keeping them in my peripheral vision, I can see the exact moment when attraction sparks between them. The way Haoshen leans closer to hear her speak, and the way Yueling touches his arm with perfect timing. But what makes this scene especially satisfying is knowing that Zhou Mingxin is watching from across the garden, his camera ready to document this first meeting between my sister and my future ex-fiancé, building a photographic record of the relationship that will eventually be presented as evidence of their fraud. They seem to be hitting it off, Mingchen says when I rejoin him near the rose garden, his voice carefully neutral but his eyes sharp with the intelligence I've learned to value. They do, I agree, watching Yueling laugh at something Haotian has said, her performance of delighted interest so perfect that even I might believe it if I didn't know better. I think they're going to be very good for each other. Very good at destroying each other when the truth comes out, and as the evening progresses, I watch them exchange contact information with the careful politeness of people who are very attracted but trying not to seem too eager, each of them thinking they're in control of a situation that I've actually orchestrated from beginning to end. "Your sister seems different tonight," Mingchen observes as we watch Yueling charm not just Haoshan but several other young men who are drawn to her combination of beauty and apparent intelligence. "Different how?" I ask, though I know exactly what he means because Yueling is performing a perfected version of my personality, the woman I could have been if I'd had her calculating intelligence and her willingness to steal whatever she needed to succeed. "More confident," he says carefully, "more polished, like she's found her true calling or something. Her true calling as a thief and a fraud, using my stolen identity to attract the kind of man who would never have noticed her if she was just being herself. And when I see Haoshan slip her his business card with a invitation to call him about discussing Myanmar business opportunities over dinner, I know that my trap is beginning to close around them both. I think you're right," I tell Mingchen. "I think she's finally becoming the person she was meant to be. The person she was meant to be is a criminal who destroys herself through her own greed and ambition." And as the party winds down and I watch Yueling clutch Haoshan's business card like a prize she's won through her own merit, I feel the cold satisfaction of knowing that their love story will become the very weapon I use to destroy them both. Because this time, I'm not the naive girl who trusts her sister's motives or her boyfriend's loyalty. This time, I'm the architect of their downfall, and every moment of their stolen happiness is bringing them closer to the public destruction that awaits them. By the time we're 22, Yueling has not only stolen my university degree and my boyfriend, but she's also signing business contracts as Lin Yuexi, making deals with international partners who think they're working with the real daughter of the Lin family. And when she signs the preliminary agreement for the Myanmar jade mining project worth 300 million yuan, I know I finally have the evidence that will not only destroy her personally but could send her to prison for corporate fraud. The business fraud begins subtly, as all of Yuling's crimes do, with small favors and innocent requests that gradually escalate into major felonies, and I watch it all unfold with the patience of someone who knows exactly where this story ends. "Sister," she says one afternoon, calling me from her Beijing University dormitory with the casual confidence of someone who has never been denied anything she's asked for, "I have this incredible internship opportunity at Zhang Corporation, but they want to meet with someone from the Lin family to discuss potential partnerships, and I was wondering if you could help me prepare for the meeting. Help her prepare to defraud one of China's largest corporations using my family name and my stolen credentials." And I agree with the enthusiasm of a supportive sister, while my recording equipment captures every detail of her growing ambition. "Of course," I say. "What kind of partnership are they interested in?" "Infrastructure development in Southeast Asia," she explains, and I recognize the business plan as one I developed with my father months ago, specifically Myanmar, where they think the Lin family's connections could be valuable for navigating the regulatory environment. The Lin family's connections that she has no right to leverage for a business plan she stole from my private conversations, but this time I encourage her theft instead of stopping it, because I know that corporate fraud carries much heavier penalties than simple identity theft. "That sounds fascinating," I say, "and you're right that our family has strong relationships in Myanmar. I'm sure Father would be happy to support your internship if it could benefit the family business too." Support her internship by allowing her to represent the Lin family in international business negotiations, using stolen credentials and fraudulent authority. And when she practically purrs with satisfaction at my encouragement, I have to smile at how eagerly she's walking into my trap. The Zhang Corporation meeting happens the following week, and I make sure to attend as Yueling's assistant, ostensibly there to support my sister, but actually there to witness and document her fraud as she presents herself as the legitimate Lin family representative. "Gentlemen," she says to the board of directors with the poised confidence that she's perfected through years of stealing my identity, "I'm Lin Yuexi, and I'm here to discuss how our family's Myanmar connections can facilitate your infrastructure projects." I'm Lin Yuexi when she's actually Lin Yueling committing corporate fraud in front of witnesses, and I take careful notes while my hidden recording device captures every word of her systematic deception. "Miss Lin," the CEO responds with respectful attention, "we've heard excellent things about your academic achievements and your understanding of Southeast Asian markets, and we're very interested in exploring a partnership." Excellent things about my academic achievements that she's stolen and claimed as her own, my understanding of markets that she's acquired through theft, and I watch her accept their praise with gracious humility while committing crimes that could destroy her life. I appreciate your confidence, she says, and I believe the Lin family can offer exactly the kind of local expertise and regulatory relationships that your projects require. The Lin family expertise that she has no authority to promise, relationships that belong to my father, and our legitimate business connections. But the Jiang Corporation executives don't know they're being defrauded by an imposter, and when they offer her a preliminary contract worth 50 million yuan, she accepts with the authority of someone who has every right to make such decisions. But the Myanmar jade mining project is where her ambition finally exceeds her caution, where she makes the mistake that will destroy her so completely that even our parents won't be able to protect her from the consequences. Yuexi, Haochen says during one of their romantic dinners, where I know from my surveillance that they spend most of their time discussing business opportunities using my stolen identity. I've been offered an exclusive concession for jade mining in northern Myanmar, but I need a local partner with government connections. A local partner like the Lin family, whose relationships and reputation he wants to leverage for his mining venture. And I listened to the recording of their conversation with growing satisfaction as Yueling immediately volunteers our family's involvement without any authority to make such commitments. The Lin family would be perfect for that kind of partnership, she tells him, her voice warm with the intimacy of a woman discussing business with her lover. Our connections in Yangon and Mandalay go back decades, and I'm sure we could facilitate all the necessary permits and regulatory approvals. Our connections that she has no right to promise, permits that require official family authority to arrange, regulatory approvals that she can't deliver because she's not actually Lin Yuexi. But Haochen doesn't know he's being deceived by a fraud, and when he asks her to sign a preliminary agreement on behalf of the Lin family, she agrees without hesitation. I can sign as the Lin family representative, she says, and my blood runs cold with the recognition that she's about to commit a crime that could send her to prison for decades. My father has given me authority to negotiate international partnerships. My father has given her no such authority because she's not his daughter and she's not Lin Yuexi, but when she signs that contract using my name and claiming to represent our family's interests, she's committing fraud on a scale that will destroy not just her, but potentially Haochen as well. The signed contract arrives at our family home 3 days later, addressed to Lin Yuexi but bearing Yueling's forged signature, and when I show it to Chen Bo with instructions to file it in our business records, I know that I finally have the evidence needed to destroy her completely. Miss Yuexi, Chen Bo says with the careful discretion of someone who has served our family for 30 years, should I inform your father about this Myanmar mining agreement? Not yet, I tell him, though my heart is racing with the knowledge that this contract represents the final piece of evidence I need. I want to review all the details first, but please make sure to preserve the original documents in our secure files. Preserve the evidence of corporate fraud that will send my sister to prison when I finally reveal the truth about who she really is, and as I hold that contract in my hands, seeing my stolen name on agreements worth hundreds of millions of yuan, I know that Yueling's destruction is now inevitable. Because she's not just stealing my identity anymore, she's committing international fraud using our family's reputation and resources, making promises she can't keep and signing contracts she has no authority to execute, and when the truth comes out, the legal consequences will be so severe that even our parents' wealth and influence won't be able to protect her. This time, Lin Yueling's ambition will be the very thing that destroys her, and every stolen success will become evidence of her crimes when I finally expose what she really is. When Yueling announces her engagement to Jiang Haochen and asks me to help plan the party, I agree with such enthusiasm that she actually tears up with gratitude, not knowing that I'm planning the most spectacular exposure in Chinese high society history, complete with DNA testing equipment, legal documentation, and a guest list that includes every important person who needs to witness her complete destruction. The engagement announcement comes on a Tuesday morning in March, exactly 6 years after she first borrowed my student ID, and when she calls me from Beijing with tears of joy in her voice, I know that the final act of my revenge is about to begin. Sister! She sobs into the phone, her voice breaking with what sounds like overwhelming happiness. Haochen proposed last night. We're getting married. And I want you to be the first to know, because none of this would have been possible without your support and encouragement over the years. None of this would have been possible without my stolen identity and my fraudulent credentials. but I respond with the enthusiasm of a loving sister while my recording device captures her unwitting confession to 6 years of systematic fraud. "Oh my God, Yueling, that's incredible news," I gush, injecting exactly the right amount of excitement and sisterly pride into my voice. "Tell me everything. I want to hear every detail about the proposal." "It was perfect," she says, and I can hear her crying with happiness as she describes the scene that should have been mine in a different life. "He took me to the rooftop restaurant where we had our first official date, and when he got down on one knee, he said that marrying Lin Yuexi would make him the luckiest man in China." Marrying Lin Yuexi when he's actually proposing to Lin Yueling using my stolen identity, and I have to bite my tongue to keep from laughing at the irony of a proposal based on 6 years of systematic deception. "That sounds so romantic," I say, though my heart is racing with anticipation for what comes next. "And I'm so happy that you've found someone who appreciates everything wonderful about you. Everything wonderful about me that she's stolen and perfected, and when she asks me to help plan their engagement party, I agree with such immediate enthusiasm that she actually starts crying again with gratitude. "Would you really help me plan it?" she asks, her voice trembling with emotion. "I know it's a huge favor to ask, especially when you've already done so much to support my relationship with Haoshen, but you have such perfect taste, and you know all the best venues and vendors." "I know all the best venues because I've been attending Beijing high society events since childhood, vendors who know the Lin family name and will provide their finest services for what they believe is my engagement party, and I accept her request with the grace of a sister who wants nothing more than her siblings' happiness." "Of course I'll help," I say. "This is going to be the most beautiful engagement party Beijing has ever seen, and I want to make sure every detail is absolutely perfect. Perfect for the most spectacular public destruction in Chinese social history." And as we begin planning what Yuling believes will be her triumphant introduction to Beijing society as Hao Tian's fiancé, I'm actually planning the systematic exposure of every crime she's committed over the past 6 years. The guest list is where I begin laying my trap, suggesting that we invite not just our immediate social circle but every important person who has been affected by Yueling's fraud, the Beijing University Admissions Board, the Zhang Corporation executives, the Myanmar business partners, even representatives from the modeling agencies that contracted with Lin Yuexi over the years. "Are you sure we need such a large guest list?" Yueling asks when I propose inviting over 300 people. "I was thinking something more intimate, maybe just close friends and family." Close friends and family who might be more willing to overlook obvious inconsistencies in her story, but I convince her that a large, prestigious guest list will establish her social position as Haoshen's fiancé and showcase the Lin family's influence to maximum advantage. "This engagement party isn't just about celebrating your love," I tell her with sisterly wisdom. "It's about establishing your place in Beijing society as a married woman, and the more important people who attend, the more respect and influence you'll have in the future. The more witnesses who will be present when I expose her fraud, and when she agrees to my expanded guest list with tears of gratitude, I know that she's sealed her own fate. The venue I choose is perfect for my purposes, the Grand Hyatt's largest ballroom, the same location where she humiliated me in my previous life, complete with multiple screens for presentations, professional audio equipment, and enough space for 300 guests to witness her complete destruction. "The Grand Hyatt is perfect," she says when I show her the venue. "It's so elegant and prestigious, exactly the kind of place where I want to begin my new life as Mrs. Jiang." Mrs. Jiang using my stolen identity, and when she signs the venue contract using the name Lin Yuexi, I make sure to witness her signature while my hidden camera records another piece of evidence for my growing collection. But the most important element of my planning is the surprise presentation I'm preparing for the evening's entertainment, a comprehensive documentary of Yueling's 6-year crime spree, complete with recorded conversations, photographic evidence, financial records, and DNA test results that will prove beyond any doubt that she is not Lin Yuexi and has no right to anything she's achieved. "I want to do something special during the party," I tell her as we finalize the evening's schedule. "A presentation about your journey together, showing how you met and fell in love. Maybe some photos from your modeling career and your university achievements. A presentation that will show exactly how she met and fell in love using my stolen identity, photos from a modeling career built on fraud, university achievements earned through systematic deception, and when she claps her hands with delight at the idea, I know that she's enthusiastically planning her own public execution. That would be incredible, she says. You could show all my best modeling photos, my university graduation, maybe some of the business meetings where I represented the Lin family. It would be like a celebration of everything I've accomplished. Everything she's stolen, and when the DNA testing company delivers their equipment to my hotel room the night before the party, I know that I'm finally ready to reveal the truth about who Lin Yueling really is. Because tomorrow night, in front of 300 of Beijing's most important people, I'm going to expose 6 years of systematic fraud with evidence so overwhelming that even our parents won't be able to deny what she's done. Tomorrow night, Lin Yuling's perfect life built on my stolen identity will crumble into ruins, and this time, I'll be the one standing victorious while she faces the consequences of her crimes. As Yueling stands beside Jiang Haoshan in the ballroom of the same Grand Hyatt where I died in shame in my previous life, wearing a custom gown bought with money earned using my stolen identity, I step forward with microphone in hand and announce to the 300 guests that I have a special engagement gift for the happy couple, the truth about who Lin Yueling really is. And when the DNA test results appear on the giant screens showing that she shares no genetic material with our parents while I am a perfect match, the silence in that ballroom is so complete you could hear a pin drop in Shanghai. The evening begins exactly as Yueling dreamed it would, with Beijing's elite gathering in the opulent ballroom to celebrate what they believe is the engagement of Lin Yuexi to Jiang Haoxian, and I watch my sister accept congratulations and praise with the gracious confidence of someone who has completely forgotten that her entire identity is built on lies. She looks radiant. I hear one guest say to another as they admire Yueling in her custom Valentino gown, Lin Yuexi has always been such an accomplished young woman, and Haoshan is lucky to have found someone so perfect. Perfect because she's stolen perfection from me, and I smile and nod when guests compliment me on how beautiful my sister looks tonight, while my heart pounds with anticipation for the moment when their admiration turns to horror. The formal program begins with speeches from our parents, who beam with pride as they talk about Yueling's achievements and character, describing her as the ideal daughter who has brought nothing but honor to the Lin family name. We couldn't be prouder of our daughter Yueling, my father says, his voice warm with genuine affection. Watching her grow into such a successful, principled young woman has been one of the greatest joys of our lives. Successful through fraud, principled in her commitment to systematic theft, and when the audience applauds my parents' words, I know they're about to witness the destruction of every assumption they've made about our family. Haoshan's speech is even more painful to watch, as he describes falling in love with Yuling's intelligence, ambition, and integrity, qualities that he believes define her character but which actually belong to the identity she's stolen from me. When I first met Yueling, he says, his voice filled with genuine love and admiration, I was immediately struck by her sophistication and her deep understanding of international business, and the more I got to know her, the more I realized that I had found not just a beautiful woman but a true partner who shares my dreams and values. Shares his dreams because she stole mine, understands business because she's been using my education and my family's connections, and when he talks about her integrity while she stands beside him accepting praise for qualities that don't belong to her, I know that his heartbreak will be almost as complete as hers when the truth comes out. And now, I say, stepping forward to the microphone as the formal speeches conclude, I'd like to present a special gift to the happy couple, something that I think will really illuminate the true story of their relationship. The true story of 6 years of systematic fraud, and I watch Yueling's face light up with anticipation as the ballroom lights dim and the giant screens around the room flicker to life. This is a documentary I've prepared, I announced to the 300 guests, showing the real journey of how Yueling became the woman we're celebrating tonight. The real journey of systematic identity theft, and as the first images appear on screen, to photographs of Yueling using my student ID, recordings of her requesting to borrow my credentials, documentation of her using my name for modeling auditions, I watched the confusion ripple through the audience like a spreading stain. What is this? Yueling whispers, her face going pale as she recognizes the evidence I've been gathering for 6 years. Yuexi, what are you doing? I'm giving you exactly what you asked for, I say, my voice carrying clearly through the ballroom's sound system, a celebration of everything you've accomplished, starting with the day you first borrowed my student ID and decided to become me instead. The documentary continues with recorded conversations where she admits to using my name, photographs of her signing contracts as Lin Yuexi, financial records showing money earned through fraudulent credentials, and with each new piece of evidence, the gasps from the audience grow louder and more horrified. Ladies and gentlemen, I announce as the final section begins, I know this is shocking, but I have one more piece of evidence that I think will clarify everything. And that's the DNA test results that definitively prove who is really who. The DNA test results that I commissioned months ago, using hair samples collected from our shared bathroom and processed by Beijing's most prestigious genetic laboratory. And when the official documents appear on screen showing conclusively that Yueling shares no genetic material with our parents while I am a perfect biological match, the silence that falls over the ballroom is profound and terrible. According to these certified DNA results, I continue, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands, the woman you know as Lin Yuling is not biologically related to Mr. and Mrs. Lin, while I share 50% genetic material with each of them, which means that everything she has achieved using the name Lin Yuexi was earned through systematic identity theft. The screens now show side-by-side comparisons of our genetic profiles, official documentation from the testing laboratory, and sworn statements from the technicians who processed our samples, creating an irrefutable scientific case that destroys 6 years of carefully constructed lies. This is impossible, Yueling says, her voice rising to near hysteria as she stares at the screens, showing her complete genetic disconnection from our family. There must be some mistake, some error in the testing. I don't understand what's happening. What's happening, I say, turning to face her directly while 300 witnesses watch our confrontation, is that your 6 years of fraud are finally being exposed. Every stolen achievement, every fraudulent contract, every lie you've told to build this fake life is being revealed in front of everyone who believed in you. The audience is beginning to murmur now, voices rising with shock and outrage as they process the implications of what they're seeing, and I can see our parents' faces in the front row, their expressions shifting from confusion to horror as they realize that their preferred daughter has been systematically deceiving them for years. But this means, one guest says loudly enough to be heard across the ballroom, that all those business contracts she signed as Lin Yuexi were fraudulent? She had no authority to represent the Lin family. That's exactly what it means, I confirm, including the Myanmar jade mining agreement worth 300 million yuan that she signed using my name without any legal authority, which constitutes international corporate fraud. International corporate fraud that carries criminal penalties including decades in prison, and when the police officers I contacted earlier today step forward from their positions near the ballroom entrance, I know that Yueling's legal troubles are just beginning. Lin Yueling, the lead detective announces, his voice carrying across the silent ballroom. You're under arrest for identity theft, corporate fraud, and conspiracy to defraud multiple business entities. You have the right to remain silent, and the right to legal representation. Under arrest at her own engagement party, in front of 300 witnesses, wearing a gown bought with money earned through fraud, and as the handcuffs click around her wrists, I watch 6 years of carefully planned revenge reach its perfect conclusion. Yuexi! She cries as the police lead her toward the exit, her voice breaking with desperation. Please, you have to help me, we're sisters. You can't let them destroy my life like this. We're not sisters, I say quietly, my words carrying clearly in the profound silence of the ballroom. The DNA tests prove that conclusively, and you destroyed your own life the day you decided to steal mine. And as the police escort her from the ballroom where she had planned to celebrate her triumph, I stand in the spotlight of vindication, finally free of the sister who stole everything I was and tried to erase me from my own existence. 6 months later, as I stand in my real name in the executive office that was always meant to be mine, wearing the engagement ring that Joe Minkin placed on my finger with love based on truth rather than lies, I can finally say that I've not only reclaimed my identity but built something even better than what was stolen from me. And when I feel the flutter of new life growing inside me, I know that this child will grow up, knowing exactly who they are and where they belong. The legal aftermath of Yueling's exposure was swift and decisive, with prosecutors presenting my 6 years of evidence to build an airtight case for identity theft, corporate fraud, and conspiracy charges that resulted in a 15-year prison sentence. While Haoshen's involvement in the Myanmar contracts led to the collapse of his business empire and his own criminal charges for unwitting participation in international fraud. I can't believe I was so completely deceived, Haushin had said during the trial, his voice hollow with the devastation of realizing that everything he thought he knew about his fiancée was built on lies. Every conversation, every shared dream, every moment I thought we connected, it was all based on a stolen identity. Based on my stolen identity that Yueling had perfected so completely that even someone who spent 3 years in an intimate relationship with her never suspected the truth, and watching his testimony about how thoroughly she had convinced him that she was Lin Yuexi gave me a strange satisfaction, knowing that his pain was justice for the humiliation he put me through in my previous life. Our parents' reaction was perhaps the most satisfying aspect of the entire exposure, watching them struggle to process the reality that they had consistently chosen a fraud over their real daughter, that every achievement they admired in Yueling was actually mine, stolen and repackaged to appeal to their preferences. How could we have been so blind? My mother asked during one of our family therapy sessions, her face ravaged with guilt and shame. Every sign was there, every inconsistency, every moment when you tried to tell us the truth, and we dismissed you as jealous instead of listening. Dismissed me as jealous, while enabling a criminal who was systematically destroying their real daughter's life, and while I appreciate their belated recognition of their mistakes, I've learned that forgiveness is something that must be earned rather than assumed. The important thing now, I told them with the grace of someone who has moved beyond the need for their validation, is that we build our relationship based on truth, rather than the lies that Yueling used to manipulate all of us for so many years. Truth, like the fact that I'm now engaged to Zhou Mingchen, the man who saw through Yueling's performance from the beginning and loved me for who I actually was, rather than who I pretended to be, whose quiet loyalty and steady support proved more valuable than all of Haushin's charm and ambition. I knew something was wrong with your family dynamics, Mingchen told me the night I finally explained everything that had happened. Yueling always seemed to be performing rather than just being herself, and you seemed diminished whenever she was around, like you were shrinking to make room for her to shine. Shrinking to make room for her to steal my spotlight using my own achievements, and when he proposed 6 months after the trial ended, his words were everything I had always wanted to hear. I love Lin Yuexi, the real Lin Yuexi, exactly as you are. The real Lin Yuexi, who is now running the international division of our family business, using the education and connections that were always rightfully mine to build legitimate success rather than stolen achievements. And every day I feel more like myself than I have since I was 16 years old. The pregnancy announcement came 3 months after our wedding, and when I felt that first flutter of life inside me, I realized that this child represents the ultimate victory over Yueling's attempts to erase me from existence, proof that Lin Yuexi not only survived her systematic destruction but thrived beyond anything she could have imagined. Have you thought about names? Mingchen asks as we stand together in the nursery we're preparing, his hand resting gently on my growing belly. Something that reflects new beginnings? New beginnings? Like the life I've built from the ashes of the one Yueling tried to steal? And I smile as I consider names that reflect strength and authenticity rather than the borrowed identity that nearly destroyed me. Sometimes I wonder if I should feel guilty about the completeness of Yueling's destruction, about how thoroughly her attempt to become me resulted in the loss of everything she thought she wanted. But then I remember the 6 years of systematic betrayal, the way she turned my own family against me, the humiliation of dying alone and unloved because she had stolen my very identity. Do you ever regret how it all turned out? Mingchen asked me once, the way she lost everything while you gained everything? I regret that it was necessary, I told him honestly. But I don't regret finally receiving justice for 6 years of systematic abuse. And I don't regret saving other people from being victimized by her fraud. Justice that came not from revenge but from simply allowing the truth to be revealed, from documenting her crimes and presenting the evidence to people who could make informed decisions about who deserved their trust and support. The last time I saw Yueling was at her sentencing hearing, where she stood in prison clothes looking nothing like the polished imposter who had stolen my life, her face ravaged by the stress of being exposed as a fraud and facing the consequences of her crimes. "I'm sorry," she had said when our eyes met across the courtroom. "I never meant for things to go this far. I just wanted to be successful and loved. And using your identity seemed like the only way to achieve my dreams." Using my identity because her real self wasn't good enough to achieve anything worth having, and while I felt a moment of pity for the broken woman she had become, I couldn't forget the years of systematic cruelty disguised as sisterly love. "I forgive you," I told her, because forgiveness was necessary for my own peace rather than hers. But forgiveness doesn't erase consequences, and you'll have to live with the results of your choices just like I had to live with being erased from my own life. Now, as I stand in my office overlooking Beijing with my hand on my growing belly and my engagement ring catching the afternoon light, I can honestly say that being reborn gave me something more valuable than just the chance to reclaim what was stolen. It gave me the opportunity to become stronger, wiser, and more authentic than I ever could have been if I hadn't experienced the complete destruction of everything I thought I needed to be happy. This child will grow up knowing that identity cannot be stolen, only borrowed temporarily, and that truth always wins in the end, even when it takes years to finally come to light. This child will grow up with parents who chose each other based on honesty rather than deception, in a family that values authenticity over achievement, with a mother who learned that the most beautiful revenge is simply living well in your own name. And sometimes, late at night when Mingchen is sleeping beside me and our baby is moving gently inside me, I whisper a quiet thank you to whatever force gave me the chance to be reborn, because this life, built on truth rather than theft, love rather than lies, authenticity rather than stolen achievement, is everything I never knew I wanted and everything I always deserved to have.